Hello and welcome back to the Coming of Cage podcast, your Nicolas Cage movie review podcast. I am one of your hosts, Derek. Your other host, Ryan, is right here with me.
Right here with you.
Yes. In the apocalypse, I guess, is what this is, a post-apocalyptic episode.
As are so many of these Nick Cage episodes.
You know, a lot of them are, or at least entering the apocalypse, right? We just did knowing where the apocalypse is happening actively in the movie. But this week we are talking about the 2024 film. So this is the most recent movie that we've done, Arcadian, which is a monster horror action drama sci-fi thriller, according to IMDb.
I would call it very few of those things, but you know.
Yeah. It's directed by Benjamin Brewer, who did The Trust, which you and I are both pretty big fans of.
Right.
And it was written by Mike Nillen, who I'm sure very few people know. That's because he is Nick Cage's agent, manager, and producing partner. The only other movie he's ever written, it was 2018's Braven, which starred Jason Momoa.
And you've probably never heard of it.
And I had not heard of it. And the only movies he's ever produced are Nick Cage movies, starting with 2014's Rage.
Yeah.
So this was written by that dude.
Yeah, good writing. I mean, that's the one thing I would say about this movie. Definitely a professional writer wrote this. I mean, I guess technically that's true because he probably got paid to write it. Which
yeah, he's a professional.
Make him a professional, but I don't know that I would hire him a second time to write things.
Sure. I mean, I think that's fair.
Before we get
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, before we get too deep into this, there's a couple things I want to talk about. One,
please.
We had to delay this episode because Derek's had an illness he's been fighting. And so my memory, as if you're a frequent listener, you know that my memory is like a goldfish, and like every 6 hours or so, it just resets. So I'm going to be leaning on Derek a lot to remember the things that I said in my notebook, which are probably ridiculous.
Cool.
But the second thing I want to talk about, we don't have to get too deep into it, is these movies that Nick Cage seems to be the go-to guy when a movie has come out and people and producers think it's going to be a genre in itself, and they're like, we got to pump out something quick to capitalize on this hype. So, for example, Taken was really popular with Liam Neeson, yeah. And so I think we've done at least two Nick Cage movies that were meant to be in that same genre, or that same, like, I don't know if genre is the right word, but you know what I'm talking about? Like, they're trying to capitalize on that specific thing that is popular. When something's like a sleeper hit and they're like, oh crap, maybe we should capitalize on this. Well, this one was like A Quiet Place, trying to capitalize on that whole trend. But it would be fun at some point to go through the movies we've watched and kind of put them into, like, name the movie that was popular, and then the list of Nick Cage movies that he made to try and capitalize on that genre post that movie coming out. Because it is funny to me that every time there's, like, in our lifetimes, which is a lot of the time he's been acting, we could name the, like, tentpole movies that came out that were really iconic for that generation, or that, I don't know, decade or less. Sure. And then all the movies that he did that were like to capitalize on that. Not a lot of other actors I can think about that have done that in multiple movie, like capitalizing on multiple movies like that, like Quiet Place, Taken. You know, you can name several different movies that he tried to make not a copy of, but a cash-in kind of movie.
That's very interesting. I didn't really think about that over the course of his career. This is definitely taking a nod from A Quiet Place. There's no question about that at all.
Well, I mean, the Fast Times at Ridgemont High, we had that, which he was in, but we had the other movie that we did, Varsity Girl or whatever.
Yep.
Was that
Valley Girl?
Valley Girl. Yeah. That was clearly meant to capitalize on. So even like in his early days,
he was doing that.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely true. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it would be fun to go through and see if we can, like, pick out all the movies. I mean, because obviously not all of his movies are going to be that way, but probably out of the 114 or whatever he's done, there's probably nearly half of those were like meant to capitalize on another film's success.
Interesting.
National Treasure and Da Vinci Code. I mean,
I think National Treasure was first,
was
though.
it?
I think
Okay, maybe
so.
it was.
I'm pretty
But I mean, I
sure.
would still put that in the list, even though he didn't,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I think I'd have to double check, but I think National Treasure did so well that they were like, well, now we can adapt the Da Vinci Code book,
Right. That's
right?
probably
And people
true.
will go see it. I think is how that
But then
went.
he did National Treasure 2, which wasn't really needed. So you could put that into the, I
That's
don't know.
certainly true. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you got the ant bully,
Yeah.
right?
Which was a lot. There were a lot of insect animated movies at the time.
Totally. Yeah. Well, so very contrasted here. I watched this morning. So we're recording
Oh, wow.
in the morning. I woke up. My dog wakes me up by 7:30 anyway. There's nothing I can do about it. So I was up. So I watched it this morning. So I had like an hour between the movie ending and the podcast. So it's fresh. It's
So
fresh in my
fresh.
mind. I purchased this one on Blu-ray, which I don't do
Wow.
that often. I usually do like streaming or I'll rent it on Prime. Um, all of the trailers, all of the previews, every single one of them was a Nicolas Cage movie, which I thought was pretty funny.
That is funny.
Yeah. So that was interesting. So I saw some trailers for some movies we haven't done yet. So that was cool.
Did any of them get you excited?
I saw the trailer for Color Out of Space, which I've never seen that movie nor a trailer for it. We have obviously seen Mandy. We talked about that on the show fairly early on. The trailer was bonkers. So that has me at least
Intrigued?
intrigued.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Well, we should get
But
into this
yeah,
movie.
let's do it. Let's talk Arcadian.
So if you haven't watched this podcast before, what we usually do is I will take notes go while we're watching the movie or while I'm watching the movie, since we usually don't watch them together, and we will go through those notes and kind of review the movie in the process. So my first note is 12 different production companies.
So many.
It wasn't actually 12. I didn't count it, but the whole like first 4 minutes of the movie is just different company logos popping up.
Well, and even after the movie starts, they still get the little text title of it.
Yeah,
It's always
all of them
so
get
and
a second one. Yeah.
yeah, so and so presents, so and so presents, so, like over and over. Then it was a Saturn film production, which I would like to know what's the difference between so and so presents and a so and so production. I would like to know the legal difference
I don't
contractually,
know.
what that is.
We should interview a lawyer. We can ask him.
There you go. All
Yeah.
those lawyers out there who listen to our show, we'd love to talk to
Yeah,
you.
hit us up. We want to. We have so many really boring production
Yeah.
questions to ask you.
Or if you're a producer, maybe, and you listen,
That would be good too. Yeah.
hit us up.
Also, Derek's got some ideas to pitch you. Um,
Yeah.
so my first actual movie note is shaky cam through the streets, one shot.
Ugh.
I did not know at this point, but would quickly figure out that basically the whole movie is shaky cam, and it made
Yeah.
me want to turn off the TV.
Yeah. I'm
Like
not a shaky cam guy.
this movie could have been like top tier, A plus, and if it was shaky cam the whole time, I probably would have been out. I mean, that's one way to turn me off of a movie immediately.
100%. Yep. I'm with you there completely.
But yeah, they did this like one shot thing. I thought it was meant to be one shot. Maybe it wasn't actually one shot. It was meant to resemble a oneer, but of him like running through the streets and there's explosions and gunfire and all kinds of random shit happening around him with no explanation really.
Hmm.
Um,
It's implied he might have murdered somebody
sure.
when he's in that garage. There's a dead dude under the car.
Yeah. Um, then he just does this for like 4 minutes and eventually ends up in a room with some babies that he holds.
Yeah. Two little babies.
And we don't know if they're his babies or if he kidnapped these babies or like
Oh man, I didn't even think. I guess like we don't. I mean, we don't know. I just
no, there's
assumed.
legitimately no and honestly throughout this movie, I know that some movies are better, like A Quiet Place, for example, is better because you don't know a lot about what's going on. But you do learn about stuff going on in A Quiet Place. In this movie, you don't learn about anything. He shows up
Yeah.
he runs through the streets, explosions, possibly killing somebody, gunfire, and then ends up in a room with two babies that he's holding. And
Yeah.
then we cut to 15 years later.
Damn it. It did not occur to me that they weren't his kids. And now you've got me like throwing this whole thing into question. that he just like has, has
Has
somebody
babies.
else's kid.
Yeah, like
Oh
he
my
maybe the
God.
person he killed was the actual dad. They don't really look like him, so maybe the person that was dead was his actual dad.
I don't think that just because there's so much space between where the babies are and where the body is, but
Well, maybe he stashed him there.
maybe. And then he went back to the scene of the murder. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I mean, we don't get any explanation on that, and
No.
it's not beneficial to the plot at all. That we don't get explanation. They could have done a throwaway line and say that something about their mom dying or something like that.
Yeah, the mom's never even mentioned. We have
But
no idea. Like, was
yeah,
she dead before all hell broke loose,
for
or
all
we
we
don't
know, he
know.
stole these babies and killed the parents, or maybe the
Jeez.
parents saw the parents die and then he took care of them. I mean, that changes his character a lot depending
It
on what the
does.
what the explanation is. So it
Oh
probably
my
would have been
God.
good to know.
Oh my God.
Anyway, yeah, so we see him holding the babies, and then it cuts to 15 years later. And my next note is this whole fucking movie going to be shaky cam?
Yes.
Yes, yes, past
Almost.
Ryan, it is.
Almost.
Other than like a few shots. It's also going to be a bunch of, even though it's classified as a horror movie, the only horror is going to be a bunch of stupid ass jump scares that are mostly predictable. So yeah, that nothing really to look forward to, unfortunately. If you can't tell, I did not really enjoy this movie. I thought that the premise was interesting. There were some interesting things that could have happened with the plot of the movie, but overall, I thought it was a wasted opportunity.
Well, I think to
Um,
your point, like about A Quiet Place, right? Like spoilers for A Quiet Place, but we do know that these things are aliens in A Quiet
well,
Place,
yeah. Oh, in A Quiet Place,
right?
yeah. In this,
Right.
we don't know.
We don't really know what these things are. It's implied that they're a consequence of us polluting the earth. So they're a mutation of some kinds.
Yeah, it reminded me. Do you remember when we watched One Punch Man?
Yeah.
Like one of the big giant guy to introduce that he can beat people in one punch is like a manifestation of the pollution of the earth.
Yeah.
And he talks this huge game that gets killed in one punch. But that's what it reminded me of because that's the only other time I think I can remember seeing that kind of a concept.
Hmm. But we
But
don't know that that's necessarily what
right,
happens.
there's like a yeah, and we'll get into that when I get to that note. But there's like a random exposition fest
Right.
for trying to figure out what's going on. But it is nobody actually knows the answer. At least that is in this movie that speaks about it. So.
Hmm. Hmm.
So basically we see Nick Cage outside and he doesn't look any older
No,
than
he
he
looks
did
exactly
15
the
years,
same.
literally looks identical. Um,
I thought they were going to
and
age him up.
I thought so too, or age him down for the
Or
first shot would have been easier.
right,
But
right.
yeah, they didn't. So we see him outside and they're waiting for what's presumably one of the kids that he was raising to come back. One of them is there in the house and is like waiting on a timer and Nick Cage is outside yelling for the kid, and he shows up right when they're getting ready to do whatever they're gonna do with the when the countdown hits zero. But they go inside, and basically this is the intro to what their life is now, 15 years later, where we see them. It's starting to get dark out, so they're boarding up the house. Um, putting not they're not putting any lights out, but they seem like they're trying to stifle any light that would exit the house. They're just trying to basically block it's as if they're trying to block something from coming in. So yeah, you get that vibe that it's some sort of deadly thing that could come in.
Right.
Um, my next note is "Are we not men?" Which is I feel like there was a chant or something where they start.
Yeah. So the brothers are bickering over something, which they do through most of the movie. And Nick's doing the very kind of stereotypical father thing. That's not helping. That's not helping. And he does this, are we men thing. And he takes his, what I think was just the dinner knife
Yeah.
and sticks it in the table. And
Oh
then
yeah, and then they all do the same
the
thing.
other one of the sons does it, Thomas does it, but then Joseph goes to do it and it doesn't stick in the table. And I would love to know if that was on purpose or
Right.
because that made me chuckle. And I don't know if I was supposed to find that funny, but I did.
It's also just I don't know. I feel like they're trying like in a normal life, when you have two teenage brothers. they're probably gonna bicker with each other, and I get
Sure.
that. But in this situation, they've gone through all these years together, and just like they're just the bickering has just gotten to the breaking point just now, like right now.
Well, that is kind of the problem with the movie, isn't it? That everything comes to a head at literally the exact same
Right.
moment, which, I'm not saying that that's impossible, right? But those are the types of things when people complain that a movie feels contrived, which I personally don't like that critique usually. This is what they're talking about.
And you're okay with that critique in this movie.
I'm much more comfortable with it.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, we get the Are We Not Men thing, and then we see that they have a dog, which was very cute, by the way, and the
Yeah.
dog does not die. So
Right? Yeah, that made me
the whole
happy.
time I was like, they're gonna use because it's pretty common trick, right? You fall in love with the dog, and then you have to watch the dog die so that you hate whatever killed it.
Mhm.
But no, the dog survives the whole time,
Doesn't
which
even
is
get
not
hurt.
really a spoiler. No, actually, he's out
Great.
of danger most of the time,
Yeah.
even though he's right there next to people that are in danger. So maybe these pollution creatures are just not interested in dogs, which is fine with me.
They're not interested in sheep either.
That's true because they have sheep outside and they don't ever get killed.
So they only go
Um,
after humans, which again is weird.
yeah. But the dog starts pawing up the ground or something, and that's apparently a signal. Because then you hear like pounding, not just like knocking, but like pounding, slamming on a door.
Mhm.
And immediately Nick Cage and one of the brothers goes down to like hold the door,
Yeah, Thomas.
Thomas, to hold the door, and then the other brother does not go down.
Right.
And it's kind of implied. I thought actually maybe this kid was handicapped or something, like physically handicapped, because in the first shot where they're waiting for the brother to come back, he was up in a room sitting down. You don't really see him moving at all. So I thought maybe he was in a wheelchair or something.
Ah,
Um, and then he didn't go down the stairs with the dad and the other brother. So I thought maybe he was in a wheelchair and that was like the gimmick, right? Like
right.
not that being not a handicap is a gimmick, but like that's how they were going to make this character be problematic for the other brother. He said feel like
Right.
he's not doing as much or whatever. Um, but then we find out that the other brother was upstairs like timing everything. Like he's trying to analyze. He's the scientist brother. He's not the
Right.
jock brother.
He's the Egon of the
Right,
family.
exactly. Yeah. And so he's timing everything and trying to figure out more about these creatures, whatever they are.
Right.
Um and then I have Nick smokes a cigar,
Mhm.
which is smoking for our
Yeah.
bingo card. So
Ding.
um fucked up ATV.
Yeah, so we find out that Joseph, the nerdy kid, who is played by Jaeden Martell, who I only know from the It remakes, he is like trying to fix up like this. It's like a mule, like those like golf
Like
carts
an
on
RTV,
steroids.
not really an
Yeah,
ATV, yeah.
yeah, and he's trying to get it working, but it won't start. And Nick immediately figures out what's wrong with it.
Well, I
Um,
mean that I didn't have a problem with that because like Nick was alive before the fall of the world, and so he might have some experience working on
he
machinery or
might.
something like that. You know, a relay is a pretty common thing in the car world to, that's a pretty common trick in the car world to like if you have something that could be a problem with the relay, switch it out with another relay on the car and see if it works then. And then you have a bad relay.
Yeah, I mean, totally. This is just one of those situations where that thing's been sitting for at least 15 years,
Yeah.
right? And so I
Well, I
just,
imagine the kid fixed some other things
yeah,
like that were
totally.
more obviously wrong and couldn't get to start. So then, that was the final like, piece of the puzzle.
Fair enough. I just,
Yeah, it is. I mean, I get it. Like, why
they're
didn't if Nick Cage is that knowledgeable, why hadn't he fixed it before this?
right. Or like, why, they're in the middle of nowhere. Where are they getting these parts? Like they do find the boat later, right? But
Well,
like, I don't know.
they show that there's a part that like the kids because they send them out on a materials run, and so I'm
Yeah.
assuming that they have some places that they go to get materials. Plus, they're trading with other farms, things like that. So,
Well, so that's true, but that doesn't come up until the end of the movie,
I mean, that's true.
right? Until literally the last 90 seconds of the film, you think there's only one other group.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't know.
Um,
In the moment,
In
it
bet
felt
in between these moments that we didn't touch on, the next morning, apparently it's safe to go outside. These things only move at night,
right.
during the day. You're good. But they go back outside and they look at the outside of that door, and it's just clawed to shit, broken up. So, Nick is trying to repair the door.
Hmm.
And the other kid is working on some secret project,
Right.
which apparently was the RTV or the cage thing that drops later. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it could have been both, right? And then
Yeah,
Thomas is
he's a
off at
scientist.
this other farm, the Rose Farm.
Yeah, making love to a young girl
Oh, I don't think
because
I mean, based on,
no, but he's like basically that's what he does. He escapes and goes and
yeah.
flirts with this young girl all the time, and apparently does chores as an excuse to be able to spend time with this other girl.
Hmm.
Because what is a disaster movie without having a teenage romance subplot in the middle of it? Um, Rose Farm. Oh yeah, okay. So my next note is Rose Farm. This is our first time seeing it. We'd heard about it, but then when they're pulling in, yeah, there's sheep everywhere. There's a bunch of sheep.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess that was indicative to that's meant to prove the point that they don't attack sheep. Either that or they move all those sheep indoors every night, which I can't imagine because I've seen people move sheep and it's a nightmare.
Right. And like, I don't know. It came off to me like they are only attack humans,
Yeah.
which is odd.
Yeah, I guess. But humans are what makes pollution, I guess.
Well, that right. That's the like right because we don't know what these things are. So a pollution monster was created and it knew it was our fault. So it's only going after
Yeah,
us, I
exactly.
guess.
Even though
That's
it's
hard.
it's like a hive mind, it seems like some sort of a hive mind. I don't know. Anyway, green screen waterfall is my next note. Do you remember what that was about?
I mean, there is a waterfall. There's a scene where Nick is like kind of like laying kind of propped up on his back, smoking a cigar by a waterfall. That happened. I didn't It didn't look particularly fake to me enough to notice, but that's
Gotcha.
probably what you mean.
Yeah, I feel like it was fake, but I could be wrong. It just something about the way it lined up didn't look right to me,
Mm.
but maybe that was just the way it was shot.
So they shot the movie in Ireland. Maybe there just wasn't enough water to get what they were going
Well, then
for.
maybe it was a real waterfall. It was just the way it shot. It looked weird. I
Yeah.
don't know. So Nick Nick sends his two now that they have this RTV fix. He sends his two boys out to go on a materials run, like I had mentioned earlier. And halfway into the run, like drive out there, the kid that just wants to go get his freak on
Thomas.
is yeah, they're yelling at each other. The brothers are, and he's like, well, the other brother's like, I don't need you to go with me, and he's like, okay, well then I'm just gonna go to the farm, and he stops, and the other guy gets off and really goes to the farm, and so Joseph goes, which is the Egon. He goes to do this materials run, which is apparently like some sort of like a busted up ship on a shore or something like that.
Yeah.
But he has like propelled out into it. Not a basic, like it's a treacherous thing. And he gets down in there and he sees that it's dark inside, which seemed like it was a surprise to him. I don't really know, but he goes into the darkness and then gets immediately mobbed by bugs.
Yeah. So there's some signs of that earlier though when Nick is repairing the door. He breaks apart off one of the boards and there's just like a shit ton of cockroaches behind it.
Yeah, which is interesting because are cockroaches attracted to pollution?
I mean,
Like,
that's the thing, right? Like that, like, cockroaches are gross and disgusting. They'll survive the Holocaust type, nuclear Holocaust type situation, right? Like that's the
I
stereotype.
guess. Dr. Roachtavius does not show up in this movie, though. If you watch our Sorcerer's Apprentice review and are hoping for a return,
Uh,
it does not happen.
that would have been fun.
It would have definitely elevated the movie. But yeah, so he goes in there, and it had been established that like there's cockroaches with the monsters. It had not been established that cockroaches will swarm people like something out of the Mummy with like scarabs and
Right?
try and kill them
Yeah, that
because
was
that's
kind of
not normal
crazy.
cockroach behavior.
No.
Um, so yeah, this kid is in there and he gets completely thrashed by these bugs, but he manages to get out. and he doesn't get any materials that's shown.
Right. I
So
think he just abandons that.
yeah, and then he just because it's already getting late. Apparently, he was fighting with these bugs for hours.
Well, we don't know how
Uh,
far away the boat is.
I mean, I guess, or I guess he traveled for hours.
Yeah.
Except that it can't be that far away because it's already getting dark and he's worried about the time before he gets the thing started. So if he knew that it was going to be dark out,
That's a good point. I don't know. I don't know.
it
I
would
also
seem
like
like poor planning.
what's the range on this little ATV too, right?
I
Like
mean, they can run for quite a while, but yeah, yeah. I
well,
mean,
not 100 miles.
they're shown to have yeah, that's true. But he wouldn't even be able to travel 100 miles in a day on one of those. But yeah, I mean, they're shown to have a shit ton of gas, so apparently gas is not a problem.
Even though
Later,
doesn't gasoline break down in like 5 or 10 years?
apparently not in this universe. But yeah, so uh yeah. So the SUV or the SUV, the RTV apparently won't start, of course, when he gets out of there, out of those bugs. And so he just like blows into the relay like it's a NES cartridge, which is not how relays work, by the way,
Uh,
and puts it in and it starts. So that's great. But then the other kid coming back from the farm, even though he's made this run presumably dozens, if not hundreds of times throughout his life,
mhm.
doesn't realize there's a pit.
Well,
And
no, so he knows that that's there because earlier, the first time he goes to the farm, we watch him jump over it because the camera is very careful to show us this giant crevice,
yeah, which so you know it's
which
going to come back later.
which in my mind meant that like that's where they're all going to come out of,
Oh
right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I thought that that was going to be. Instead,
Half
he
true.
falls. Yeah.
Yeah, so on his way back, he falls into the pit, even though he's made this jump.
He fell so fast. He slipped and because you don't really see him fall into it because I guess they didn't really have a
They
big
didn't.
budget for
Yeah,
this.
they didn't want to pay a stunt performer to do that.
It happened so fast. I had to roll it back because I thought I missed it.
Not only does he fall in there so fast, but he also slams his head on a rock, but is presumably mostly fine.
He fell down like at least 20 feet.
Right, and with landed like on his back and his head on a rock.
Yeah, and he's fine.
And he's fine. I mean, they do mention he has a concussion later, but he's
Well, Nick's like you.
operating.
You probably have a concussion.
Yeah, probably. It's so minor that you might not. We don't really know. So
I thought he was gonna
congratulations.
break something, like break an arm, break an ankle, something like that to kind of
Right.
increase
Break
the
his
tension.
neck. Yeah.
Break his
That
neck.
would have really increased tension. But no, he does not break anything. He's just stuck at the bottom of this pit and can't get out. And so it gets dark and they're doing the timing thing like they did in the beginning of the movie. And basically Nick decides that the kid's not coming back. He's going to have to go look for him. He
Well,
finds
yeah,
out that he
because
went to the
Joseph comes
farm.
home alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he finds out the kid went to the farm. And so he's going to go look for him. And so he grabs a baseball bat, I think,
Hmm. And a torch
and a torch, and goes out in the dark.
with the dog, goes out with the dog, which I thought was this is where I'm like, okay, so the dog's gonna die, right? Is my expectation at this point in the movie, but spoilers, dog's fine.
Dog's fine. But yeah, Nick very easily, barely an inconvenience, finds him.
I mean,
No
my only
problem. And
thought
then he
is
magically transports to the bottom of the pit without any issue.
that I had a lot of problems with him, like stumbling across
He knows the
Thomas.
path. Yeah, it's not.
Right,
That's not.
that wasn't too
But
crazy,
but then he's
but
like shown to be 20 feet above whatever, and then he's like, I don't know how you're gonna get down here. And then Nick's just like, oh, I'm right here, actually. It's like he
barely,
has
yeah.
no rappelling equipment. He didn't bring any rope. He didn't like show to have any kind of superpowers before this or like
Well, that's
rock
part of
climbing
the
abilities.
problem, right? We have no backstory on this guy. We don't know what
Yeah,
his job was before the world went to hell. We don't know what he's done during those 15 years other than board up windows, right? So, like, we don't know his skill set at all.
right, right. I also had I when I said he grabbed a melee weapon, I also had alien bug machine thing next to that. Not sure
Alien, but
what that was in reference.
I'm
Maybe
not
that was because
sure.
we didn't really know what it was at this point.
Well, they do have these like sparker things that I'm not sure what they are, but they create sparks and can create like a little burst of fire. I think they're meant to like set other things on fire, and
Probably,
that
yeah.
I guess it's supposed to keep the creatures at bay. But that begs the question of, is it the sunlight or is it any
Any light.
light?
Yeah.
because
And she's
later
never really clarified.
but they're in houses later and stuff like that, seemingly not being bothered.
Well, and getting fire around them and stuff like that. Yeah, they don't care about that. Anyway, yeah. So while this is going on, the other kid was left alone on his own at the house. And we get probably the creepiest scene of the movie.
That's fair.
Which it wasn't all that creepy, but it was
Weird. It
disconcerting.
was weird.
Um, Basically it's a wide shot of you see like the kid sleeping
Well, they do a
on a
good job of
chair.
making sure to show you that he doesn't quite lock like the viewing port on the door,
Right. Like, yeah,
right?
when you
That shot lingers for some reason,
they
right?
have like a one of those speakeasy like
Lost
sliding
the
viewing
password.
things. Yeah, exactly. So that when those creatures come to the door, you'd be like, what's the password? You see? And then
Exactly.
they close the thing up. But yeah, they make it a point to show that he doesn't really close up. But then we see him sleeping,
On a chair, like in the middle of the room.
quote unquote sleeping in the
Yeah.
middle of the room. And we see this creature unlatch this thing because apparently it knows that they didn't lock it all the way for some reason.
And knows how to use a door.
And knows how to use, yeah, well, not a door, but well, I guess later the door, but yeah, the little sliding thing. But yeah,
They're very
it's
intelligent.
it sticks its you see like this arm come through, and you're like, there's no way this arm is gonna reach the kid because the kid's like 15 feet in the door. And then the arm just keeps coming,
It just
keeps
keeps like
coming.
unrolling itself.
Yeah, like a fire hose. And then like a finger extends. It's also like 16 times the length of a normal finger.
Well, the nail just keeps
Oh,
growing
is that the
and growing.
nail? Is
Yeah,
that
it
what it
just
was?
keeps
Okay.
growing. And I'm like, is this how the kid's gonna die? That's weird.
But it can only grow just enough to not reach the kid. It can grow crazy amounts, just happens to be the kid knew exactly how long this creature's nail and arm was somehow.
Or like, what's the motivation here? Does the creature not want to kill the kid?
I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. But anyway, the creature unlocks the door, which I don't know why they didn't just do that the first time instead of like reaching out to the kid.
Needing a
Um,
stretch. I don't
I
know.
guess, yeah. But then it opens the door and it starts heading into the kid, and surprise, the kid is awake and drops a cage, like a Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner style trap
We
onto
saw him
this.
sketching it earlier,
Yeah.
briefly, not
I
knowing what it
guess I had
was.
higher expectations that it wouldn't be just like a basic Looney Tunes style trap. But
Acme Cage.
that's what they went with. Um, yeah. And then he covered it with a blanket, I guess.
Later, yeah, so that way it would survive the daylight.
Right. Um, so yeah, it gets captured, and then at the same time, Nick and his kid are in the bottom of this ravine. I don't know if you would call it that, but crevasse uh thing. Pick your term. But they're at the bottom, which is pretty thin. It's not very wide. There's not a lot of room in there, seemingly. Um, but they're like talking at full volume and they have a torch. So they're not really trying to hide, it seems like. But then they think that they're getting attacked from one side, and so they put a bunch of rocks over there to block one side. Um, and then for the first time in 15 years, one of them burrows through the ground.
Yeah.
Apparently, we see like the ground rippling. It's been 15 years, and they just decided to use that skill now because that's what's convenient. And so so Nick Cage knows exactly how to deal with this, even though he's never seen this in his whole life, and he's been dealing with the apocalypse for 15 years, raising two kids in the apocalypse for 15 years. But anyway, he makes a bomb and blows himself up to protect his kid.
Yeah. Yeah, he's out.
And the
That's the
dog
last we
survived it. The dog survived the explosion and somehow survived getting out of the crevasse.
maybe the dog
And
didn't come down.
so the dog was just like hanging out up top the whole time.
I mean, these creatures don't bother the dog.
Yeah, but wouldn't it want to protect its owners or something? I
I-
don't know. Anyway, all that is very muddy. We don't really know what happened, but uh yeah, somehow after the explosion, it's morning now, and the kid is loading up after the explosion they stop attacking, I'm guessing. And the kid is just able to load up his blowed up real good dad onto the RTV, and drive
Well,
the
because
dad home because they
Joseph
stopped messing with him.
Joseph goes to look for them in the morning and brings the ATV. That's how
Oh, is
that
that what happened? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so he does that, and so yeah, they just spend the night, and no other creatures attack after the explosion because, you know, obviously they couldn't get to him or do any damage. The explosion signified everything
Yeah,
possible.
that's definitely unclear.
They were just like, oh well, the guy got blowed up. We're just, blowed up real good. We're just gonna kind of let them have their night because we feel for them. So yeah, they get their dad to home, and he's all exploded. And they're just like, oh, he'll be fine with some rest, and maybe we'll get some medicine to treat explosions.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it supposed to be
I
antibiotics
don't
maybe
know.
to
I
help
don't know. They knew
avoid
the infection
infection?
had set in, and that's why
Uh,
he was unconscious. I don't know. It's so stupid.
right? Like, I mean,
Uh,
the fact that they're one of the things that A Quiet Place does really well is they're yes, they're on a farm, but they're near a town. So we see them go to like a drugstore or a grocery store, things like that to get everyday supplies. And,
right,
you know, the remnants of the old world are still there.
right.
Whereas like these people
They don't
until
go to a
like
town or anything like that to try and scavenge. Yeah,
no, you see the Rose Farm and you see a decrepit boat. That's it.
yeah,
Right. So like how do the kids know what type of medicine to use, or like
right.
what like or do they know first aid?
And
Did you
how
teach
is the
them
Rose
first
Farm
aid?
getting medicine? Like, you don't really know. But yeah, they drag their unconscious dad in and put him in a bed, and they're like, he's going to be good. We just got to get him some explosion treatment medicine.
Yep.
But then the kid realizes that there's a giant monster in the middle of the room that wasn't there before in a cage with a blanket covering him, and he's like, "What is this?"
He's sharp, that guy. He's
Yeah,
sharp.
he's good. He's good. And yeah, and what could possibly happen? Well, guess what? The creature gets out and they have to kill it.
hmm
Who could have possibly foreseen that?
Well, they let the creature out because Thomas wants to kill it. He's like, "Well, I killed a bunch of them last night. I killed a ton of them."
Yeah,
And
he killed so many of them with his dad's explosion.
yeah, and Joseph's like, "Okay," and so they let him out. And then Joseph complains about it later about how he wanted to study it. I'm like, "But dude, you opened the cage. What did like he's Thomas said, I want to kill it. Open it up. You said okay, and then got mad that he did it."
But also, why didn't he study anything the night before while he had the creature in the cage?
I don't freaking know. And by the way, there's nothing comes of any of the studying. Later, he tears the thing apart, right? Its intestines are in a bucket. He's like cutting things apart. Nothing comes of that.
Also, why didn't the creature just reach through the bars of the cage with its super long arm and kill him? You know what I mean? It has 15-foot long arms. It could have killed both of them with no problem.
Well, because
And grab the key and unlock the cage.
we never see the consequences of what the light does to these creatures.
Right.
They just don't like it. Well,
Right.
are they vampires? Will they sizzle and burn up? Like what
Or they
happens?
just are mildly uncomfortable. We don't know. Or maybe they just sleep during the day and it's not actually a problem with the light at all. They're just
Right? Like
nocturnal.
I don't know. It's like they wanted to make pitch black on Earth.
Yeah, kind of. So yeah, they dissect the creature. We see like parts of it being put into like a thing to weigh it, a scale. And yeah, nothing really comes of that, but we do see that part of the creature come back later
Yeah.
uh as a weird scene that also has no explanation. Um so yeah, uh Thomas and his brother, they both drag their unconscious dad to Rose Farm, and they're trying to get Rose Farm to take them in so that the dad can get better. And Rose Farm is like, "Nah, we're good.
Peace out.
Peace out." We'll take the one brother that wants to bone my daughter, but other than that, we're not
Which I'll be
taking
mad about
anybody.
later.
Which I'll be mad about, but that don't suspect two teenagers are doing.
So stupid.
Yeah. So yeah, Thomas is like, "Sure, I'll stay and you'll be fine," and sends his brother away with the unconscious dad who's now gone through this huge trip while he's traumatically injured.
And he has to like drag around. Like Joseph's not a big guy,
No, he's a
but
young kid.
Nick Cage is like a good sized dude.
Yeah.
You know,
So then we get the makeout scene that you've known is going to be coming for a while between the girl and the guy.
Thomas and Charlotte. Yeah.
Yeah. So then my next note is punishing kid underground tunnels.
Punishing kid.
Because I
Oh,
think they
so
punished Thomas
So then what happens is Thomas decides he can't stay. And
Right.
so while everybody's
Or
busy,
was that his
I
plan the
guess
whole time?
that might maybe it was. He is going to try and steal medicine. So he's looking through the kitchen trying to find medicine or whatever. And um Charlotte gives him some medicine, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. We never learn what it is. It's just in a medicine bottle.
Yeah.
And as Thomas is leaving, some dude pulls a gun on him. Some type of rifle. And it's basically like, you stole from us, give us the medicine, I'm gonna shoot you, yada 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 yada. So he's like trying to say, I didn't steal it. Charlotte gave it to me. The guy clearly doesn't believe him. So then, yeah, they tie up Thomas in like the barn or something, and they're gonna shoot him in the leg because that's going to be good for everybody
Right.
involved.
That's the punishment.
It's going to be really helpful for everybody on this farm to have a dude who can't walk and is probably going to have an infection
And potentially die.
and potentially die.
Yeah.
Totally reasonable thing to do,
And they're gonna have to use more medicine so he doesn't get infected, you know.
which is the whole reason they didn't want to keep the
Right.
dad or whatever. Yeah. So it makes no sense. But then right in the moment where he's about to be shot in the leg, the ground breaks through and they suck the guy down.
Yeah, this is kind of the climax of the movie.
The movie becomes Tremors for a little bit.
Kind of, except less good. So
Uh,
yeah, so basically apparently these creatures have been plotting this attack for potentially 15 years. And they assault multiple areas of the house all at the same time. They come up through
mhm.
the floors, which in 15 years they've never done because they've been saving that strategy for tonight. So yeah, they come up through the floors. So while that's happening to Thomas, they're also coming up through the floors in the house, and attacking people there. Or do they come in through the barn and then get into the house? I can't remember. It's kind
It's
of
unclear.
unclear.
We don't know how they get into the main house. All we know is the dad gets up because he thinks he hears something, and immediately there's a creature and it attacks him and his wife in their room. We
Yeah,
don't
and
know.
so this is where we get a little more. Like, I was gonna say we get a little more info on the creatures, but we really don't. We just get more questions about the creatures because it grabs the wife, and it seems like a second mouth or maybe the creature's stomach comes out and absorbs the wife.
Or is wants to. I don't know. It's unclear.
Yeah, it's very unclear. I mean, there is precedence in nature for the stomach to be what takes in the food rather than going through a mouth or something, but um, in this case we don't know what it is. It kind of looks like an umbrella coming out, so I'm assuming it's like a secondary mouth or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's apparently how they eat people,
I
which I guess is what
guess.
they do because we don't really know at this point.
Yeah.
Um, and then
And
we, I
meanwhile,
can't,
Charlotte's just in her room down the hall while all of this is happening.
yes. So I don't have a note about this, but we also find out that the one that we thought ate the mom didn't really eat the mom. It kind of turned into some giant egg thing. We don't really know.
Yeah, in the tub.
Was that in a tub?
I think
I don't,
so.
I don't know. It just looks like a mass of like organic
Stuff.
creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it was very unclear, and there you get no explanation for it once again. But then they apparently the way these creatures attack is that they get like 20 of them together and turn into a giant donut and roll around.
That's where the movie like straight up lost me. Because up until then, I'm like, okay, well, this is a low budget horror film. They're at least trying to do something here. Like I'm still trying to stick with it. And then the circus ball
Yeah,
of
whatever it
monsters. I
is,
was like, what the
like
fuck?
monster frisbee. And
What
then
was
so
that?
the way that you know the monster is getting ready to drop its second mouth out or whatever that is and eat you is that it does this unnervingly fast mouth snap thing over and over
Yeah.
again, like really loud mouth snap. But it's not going to eat you with that mouth. It's going to have this other thing come out, I guess. And but so you keep seeing the creatures do that. But that's like also what we would call in martial arts telegraphing because when you're about to eat somebody, it's probably not a good idea to tell them you're about to eat them if they have the means to stop that.
Maybe they're
Because
just so cocky, you know? They're like, we want you to know it's coming.
I guess, but then they get the shit beat out of them. So,
Sometimes.
I guess.
I mean, they win
Yeah.
at the Rose Farm.
Well, yeah. So we get a scene. Oh, so they get back. Everybody dies at that farm basically, except Thomas and Charlotte. They get out and they get back to somehow without being attacked. They get all the way back to. I say all the way. Maybe they're really close, and it's like a quarter mile in a ravine that separates the two, and that's it.
I mean, maybe, right? We don't ever really get to know because all of the wide shots just show land,
Yeah.
right? Trees and hills,
But
right?
somehow they make it through all this wilderness without being attacked and get back to their farm. And so
It
they
makes me
get
wonder, is there just like one group of these things? And that's
in the
it?
whole world.
Or, I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know. Like we don't know
It's
where they
unclear.
are. We know the movie's shot in Ireland, but nobody has an Irish accent or a British accent or a Scottish accent or like anything
A
that
Nick
isn't
Cage with an Irish accent would have been pretty great.
right. But like this is just like normal American accents,
Right.
standard American accents. So like, where does this take place?
Yeah. But anyway, they get back to the house and they're knocking on the door and they tell him, he says it's Thomas because he wants them to be let in instead of just thinking it's a monster. And so they let him in and then they go talk to their dad and they're like, oh, he's waking up. Dad, what do we do? They're all attacking. Do you remember what he said? It was like an hour ago, so you should remember.
Fight.
And then he falls asleep again. Oh no, he doesn't fall asleep again. It's
No, but he's not. He's not. Like, basically, he's gone the entire second act. He's just laying there unconscious. And in the third act,
he's back to full power.
he's gonna rally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I put my next note was zombie Cage out of nowhere because he looks straight up like a zombie.
Well, because so
And he
Joseph,
moves like a zombie.
yeah, I mean, he's clearly still very injured. His arms all jacked up, right? His face is all puffy. Like they put like a prosthetic on his upper mouth and stuff like that. Um, so he's pretty beat up. But Joseph's got a plan, and this is something that always drives me nuts in movies when someone's like, "Oh, I've got a plan," and people are like, "What? What is it?" And they refuse to explain the plan. Right? There's plenty of time to explain the plan,
Yeah.
but they're not going to because we have to wait and see the plan. So he's like, they're just
His
moving stuff around,
his plan is basically to make an explosion.
blow up the
So
house.
it's not really like a really like scientific plan. It's mostly just get a bunch of gasoline and explosive materials and blow it up.
Yeah, his plan is I'm gonna blow up the house. Was that so hard to say?
Right. And
But he can't tell anybody that because it sounds ridiculous.
right as they're like getting ready to like put the final touches on everything, they get attacked
Mm-hmm.
and through the floor
Mm-hmm.
for the first time in 15 years.
Well, we do find out before they start doing all the planning, Joseph walks through the kitchen and there's a big area rug in the kitchen that looks pristine, and he steps in the middle of it and basically falls through a hole. So at some point, these creatures burrowed into the kitchen perfectly under an area rug and didn't disturb it in any way.
Right. Well, or they put it back.
I want that bonus scene. That's what I want.
They're just like, we can't let them know.
It's so Wile E. Coyote, man. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I'm telling you, Looney Tunes was the inspiration for this movie.
Well, actually, since you brought that up, did you read what the actual inspiration was?
No. Was it Looney Tunes?
Goofy.
Oh, I nailed it.
It's Goofy.
I mean,
Straight
Goofy
up.
isn't a Looney Tune, but
It's
yeah.
Disney, but like Goofy
Right.
and Wile E. Coyote, there's that's a big overlap in that.
They're in
Venn
the same
diagram.
family.
All right.
Yeah. That is funny. Anyway, so Nick has to defend the kids so that they can finish his plan. And so we get him firing a gun, which is
Woo.
another bingo card. And so yeah.
And he's just
Nick
hitting
fires
these
gun.
things with his bat,
Yeah.
as they're piling up in the hallway.
And unnecessarily, he sacrifices himself. He's like, I have to protect you, and like locks the door behind him so that the kids can get away, and he is obviously going to die in the explosion.
Well, so here's the thing. It was going to be forced to happen because the plan is they're going to hide in
a freezer. Very like
right?
Indiana Jones refrigerator explosion proof refrigerator thing. Yeah.
They're going to hide in this freezer. Now, he doesn't know that because he doesn't know the plan because Joseph hasn't told anybody the plan. Right. So he's sacrificing himself without knowing that he needs to. Right. But he does need to because there's no way all four of them are fitting in the freezer.
But he doesn't know that.
He doesn't know that.
He's like, this just hurts a lot, and so it'd probably be easier to just die. So yeah, he closes the door, it keeps the kids from getting back to him. And of course, they're all torn up or whatever. But then they all dive into a freezer, which doesn't latch, mind you.
Nope.
And the explosion goes off, and you just see a bunch of like flames around the freezer. Like you're getting a view from in the freezer, and like the lid is like flapping up and down. But what's holding it? Because that's not how freezers work. They don't lock.
When they got in it, it looked like maybe they had attached like a rope to the inside of the
Oh, okay.
door or something,
Maybe.
but it happened very fast. So I
And
don't
also, they're
know.
strong enough to keep that lid from opening when there's like however many newtons of explosive power going on around them. Like that, it's not enough to blow up the freezer. It's
But it
just
is
enough to
enough
blow
to
up a house.
blow up the whole house.
Right, but the freezer's fine. It reminded me so much of the Indiana Jones like nuclear fridge thing.
Yeah, from the Crystal Skull.
Right. The worst of all well, maybe not the worst anymore, but it's still a bad Indiana
Not one
Jones.
of the good ones.
Right. So yeah, he completely sacrifices himself unnecessarily. I mean, it was necessary, but he didn't know it was necessary.
Right.
He's just doing it to do it. Um. Oh yeah, yeah. So they get out of the fridge and they go to the RTV,
Mm-hmm.
which if you've ever driven one of these, they don't go all that fast, like 40,
No,
45, and this one's fucked up. So it's presumably not going to be able to go as fast as like a brand new one would.
I figured like
Um,
30 maybe,
right. But somehow a bunch of these creatures survive,
which makes the whole thing seem kind of worthless.
pointless. And they're in their rolling formation, rolling after this RTV that's going at full speed.
And they're on
And they're on
fire.
fire. Yeah. And they just blow up.
They recreate the Jurassic Park scene. Must go faster, is
Right.
basically what they did. And
Yeah.
Charlotte's in the back with her rifle that she has, and she just keeps shooting at them, and eventually they die.
No, they blow up, but we don't know what from. Because like they're just behind this thing chasing it, and then there's just like an explosion and they blow up and they all die.
Yep.
Even though a whole house exploding around them didn't kill them.
Maybe
Whatever.
they got so hot that they just
I
popped.
guess. Yeah, maybe that's what it was. It was like a or like a what do they call it when people spontaneously combust? There you go.
Yeah.
Spontaneous combustion. That's what happens apparently, which is at a very convenient time.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's no more of them left. Or maybe
That's
was it the sun coming out that did it? Maybe I can't
No,
remember.
because
That
it's still
okay,
clearly dark out.
gotcha.
Because
Okay,
they make it a point when they stop that they're all looking up at the stars because
that's
theoretically, right?
They've never been able to see the stars.
Now
Even though they've been shown clearly walking in the night.
The boys have maybe never been able to see the stars, but it's shown in her house that they don't board up the windows on the top floor.
Right.
Because her dad gets up to look out the window. So she's seen the stars.
Also, the kids have been out at night before. I mean, they ran from the other farm to their farm at night, and like they were out in a ravine all night.
They just never stopped to smell the roses.
Enclosed.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? You can see the sky. I don't know. It was whatever. So then we get an unnecessary funeral scene.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Which was fun.
It's fine. Well, because they want to Thomas is like, we'll rebuild the house. And Joseph's like, no, I want to build something new.
Yeah. And
Which
apparently these kids are going to repopulate the world or something. I don't really know.
Well, I mean, look, making a shelter that can protect you from the elements is one thing. Rebuilding a 2 or 3 story like colonial style house is a very different skill set.
Yeah. And none of the kids have barely been shown to build anything except like a Wile E. Coyote cage.
Right.
And he couldn't even get the RTV started. So, presumably he doesn't have mechanical engineering knowledge that would allow him to build a house. But what's to stop him from just going and living in a different house? Like,
well, so this is where the whole environment changes in the last 90 seconds of the film, because they're like, so where are we going to go now? And Thomas, all of a sudden,
set up the sequel,
I guess. Yeah. All of a sudden, Thomas goes, well, there's 6 families in the valley, 23 people, including us. What? Since when? Where did the other houses come from?
And did they get attacked?
We have
We
no
don't
idea.
know.
We have never heard about these other houses. We haven't seen these other houses or other people. There's not been a name drop or anything. Up until that line, there have been two groups of people. That's it.
That's
And
it.
those three are the only three to have
If
survived.
you go look at the cast for this movie on IMDb, there's literally 8 people credited, like 8 people credited on IMDb,
There's
and that's
eight
the
people,
entire
one of which
cast.
is marked as uncredited.
Right.
So, like, this is a small cast. Who are these other people?
And yeah, why didn't they have some sort of plan to help each other in case of this situation? And over 15 years, they never really thought about this happening.
They're not trading with each other. They don't have different skills they can
Right.
help each other with, or like
Why
whatever.
haven't they
And
made like a commune of some kind to better themselves by increasing their numbers?
it's weird, right? Because what was all of their plans, right? Like,
Just
yeah, I mean,
continue living your life, I guess, forever until you die.
like, right? I guess that's it. That was the
What's the
plan.
what's the point? I mean, at that
Yeah.
point.
So
Anyway,
I don't know.
my I have my second to last note is, so are we to believe they killed all of the creatures? What were the creatures? We don't know if they're aliens. We don't know if they're like pollution monsters. So we didn't really cover it. But earlier in the movie, when the two Thomas and the girl are flirting, Charlotte, and they're just kind of sitting on their own next to this tree, they Charlotte suggests playing a game. And the game is like an exposition writer's wet dream. The game is basically uh, tell me how the world ended in 10 seconds or less. That's the game. And they both say completely different things. So it's not implied really what actually happened. You don't know. And so at the end of the movie, you still don't know if they're aliens or monsters or demons or.
The only thing we do know is earlier in the film, Joseph and Nick are. I guess we never even said his character. Nicolas Cage's character's name is Paul, by the way.
Yeah. Does
Which
anybody even call him that
I
ever in
don't
the whole movie?
I don't think so, but that's what
Yeah.
he's credited as. But anyway, the dad, they're talking and they're talking about pollution, right? And how polluted everything got. And Nick is saying how he thinks things are better now, that the world is cleaner now, that the water is cleaner now. So like they do hit on that. And so I think we're supposed to believe that it's
But
like
I think wouldn't Nick Cage have taught his son that that's where it came from? And that's why his son has that theory. But then the girl was taught something else, so she would have a completely different theory. So what's to make
right.
his more reliable than hers?
I mean, not nothing. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess not. Just more that like it wasn't an in the moment
right.
theory, right? And look, speaking of your earlier point about how like movies kind of he does movies that are like other movies. I mean, did you ever see The Happening?
No.
Okay, don't. But I like to joke that in The Happening, nothing happens. But basically, the premise in that is that like we've polluted the planet, and the planet gets mad at us and decides to have the plants send out this like chemical that forces humans to commit suicide in like very brutal ways.
Wow, the
Um,
plant appreciates brutal ways of murder or of suicide.
yeah, and so like
Interesting.
spoilers for the happening. What every time like that chemical is going to reach a particular place, you just see the wind move over like grass or trees or something like that. And then at the end of the movie, they're all like trapped in these houses or whatever, and the wind comes by and they're fine.
Yeah, that tracks.
That's how the movie so like nothing happens, right? So like this kind of felt like the same idea, right? We polluted the planet got mad at us and created these monsters that are only going to go after humans. They can distinguish humans from all of the other animals,
Yeah.
and they know that we're the problem, so they're going to come after us.
Even though we're
And
not polluting anymore,
right,
presumably. There's
theoretically,
way less of us,
right,
and
or like these kids were babies when all this happens. Are they being held responsible
right.
for
Why are we trying to
for
kill them?
Exxon?
They didn't
Uh,
pollute anything.
right, and they can. I guess these creatures can like morph and change shape and length and size and have these big snapping jaws, but that's not how they eat you.
Right.
And it's unclear if it's sunlight. Is it UV rays that they
It's
don't
some
like,
weird,
or
like if the planet created them, why would the planet make them not able to go out in the day? And also, why would the planet make them snap their jaws before they eat something? You know what I mean? Like the planet has had a lot of years of evolution, if you believe in that kind of thing, of creatures.
Not like these.
So, huh? What?
Not like these creatures.
Right. But apparently none of what the Earth has learned, since the Earth is sentient, apparently, what the Earth has learned is that it needs to roll back everything it learned about evolution to create these creatures. It needs to give them the most superficial weaknesses possible. Anyway, my final note is that even the credits are in shaky cam.
Dude, I couldn't watch the credits. They were awful. They were like, because of the shaky cam, it looked like they were staggering the credits. It created
No.
this weird visual effect for me. I couldn't even watch them. I had to fast forward.
It was a strange choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's weird that the guy that did The Trust, which we really liked, went in such an opposite direction with the direction of this movie.
My expectation would be that the budget on this was drastically smaller. The movie only made $1 million worldwide. Um, I don't see anything on the budget for this film. Whereas, the trust had a $9 million budget. So,
Which most of that probably went to Nick Cage and Elijah on The Trust.
let's see. Well, you know what? Maybe that's not true. Maybe these numbers are bad. No, yeah, worldwide box office. It didn't make any money. So I can't find a budget for this one. So
Well, I
I'm
can't
not
imagine
sure.
it's very good.
Yeah. So,
Um,
I think when you think about who wrote it, right, what the cast is like, I think, he probably Brewer did this maybe more as a favor
yeah,
than anything else. And he was probably given like a hand cam, right? And they were dropped in Ireland for like 3 weeks and and they shot this movie, right? Because there's really only like four locations. You've got the two farms, you've got the crevice, and you've got the boat,
right.
other than the opening of the movie, I suppose. Um, which for all we know was tacked on later.
Could have
So
been.
I think that's probably has more to do with it than anything else, is that this was probably just done as a favor.
Definitely could have been. So one thing we like to do on these podcasts is go through and read some of the reviews from people like us who watched the movie. Excuse me. Anyway, um, yeah. So some of the, would you like to do the 10 out of 10s or the 1 out of 10s first?
Let's start with the 10 out of 10s. Let's hit the high
Okay.
notes.
10 out of 10. Nicolas Cage is a legend. And these are all, because this is a 2024 movie, these are all from the very recent versus some of the
Right.
reviews we normally read.
These are
I
much
love,
more real-time feelings on
right.
the movie. Yeah.
I love this movie. First of all, Nicolas Cage is really my best actor. Anyway, the story is very good, and I loves the thriller movies. Only one note about the roots of the story. I don't know where they are or where they came from. So totally, it's really good. There's no punctuation in this except for like what's the three dot thing called?
An ellipsis.
Ellipsis. Yeah, that's all they use throughout this whole thing. Also, the graphics needs to be more efficient. Again and again, at Nicolas Cage all the time, the best. The music is excellent. The moral of the movie is excellent. Love, peace, and loyalty. Justice and blessings. I was hoping to attend the movie in the theater, but unfortunately I've seen it on the TV. But it's a movie to remember. I loved it. Okay. It's an interesting take.
Yeah.
Um, wow. Okay, here we go. Arcadian is better than the Fall Guy. More violence, more scarier, and more right than stuntman dating a director. This
It's
is
a weird
this is a very
comparison.
specific 2024. They must have come out around the same time.
They did, but that's still a very strange comparison. They have nothing to do with each other.
Arcadian is one of those films that is like, I might check this out on May Day, which that does exist. He specifies that. I didn't say that. That was something that is written in here.
Okay.
After watching this film, I do have thoughts. Okay. When people saw this in other cinemas, thank goodness I don't have this film in my Crossroads Mall theater by Farm and Fleet. 3 weeks later, yesterday, I watched The Terminator. Today, I watched Arcadian. I got thought, and this is the same person that had that Fall Guy subject line. I want to be clear. I got thoughts about this. When did this film become the scariest creatures as a monster horror can ever get? The cinematography shakes so good that the VFX on the creatures themselves looks demonically scary. Nicolas Cage is back was the thought that went through my head while watching his past films in my teenage years. Arcadian is a bit slow burn, all one word, but I would argue that it's the simplicity of the film that brings it to life. There are life-changing messages throughout the film that are hidden beneath a great story and amazing acting.
Fascinating.
I want that person to start a podcast. Anyway, there's only 12 out of 12 5-star or 10-star reviews. So let's go to the 1 stars. Um, Cage has another tax bill he needs to pay. Still watching it. I may edit this if it gets better before the end. This person was writing the review
What?
as the movie was happening.
Oh my God.
The
Live
story,
tweeting.
the story is poor, the acting mediocre. Cage has these very good or very bad roles. This is the later. The dog is probably the best actor of them all. Not the worst movie I've ever seen, and the special effects are acceptable, like 1980s Gremlins or Critters. Disagree. If you inconsistencies like locking up before sunset but surviving outside at night. Don't waste your time except if you have time to waste.
Fair enough.
No, I'll take that back. Awful film. Defo, don't waste your time on this one. The music is not brilliant either. Not much else to say. Watch The Battery if you want a good movie. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. People like to just pick random other movies to compare
I
this
guess.
to.
And I want to be clear, The Fall Guy was really good. I enjoyed that movie quite a bit, so that I did not agree with that.
But it's also just a completely different kind of film.
Here's another one. Makes no sense. There is no plot or story. Okay, yes, the boys have to be home by dark, and the father insists, but they are allowed to go anywhere by any means. How did the father find his son in a ravine in the middle of the night? How did the other son find both of them in the middle of the night and fight off monsters and rescue them? Why
He
did the
didn't.
monsters stand up to everything but knives and clubs? I guess guns weren't just made for them. Okay, why burn 2 houses down? So you could live in the woods? I like Nicolas Cage, but this movie has so many holes in it, I can't enjoy it even after 2 tries at it. Good luck and good trails, LOL.
They didn't choose to burn down the first house.
Right. Yeah, that was a weird.
I don't think Joseph knew that happened.
This movie is super dumb. The stupid plot hurts my brain. The acting skill of the main actors are so bad. Nicolas Cage and the sons look like they only met for a week. They are all super calm after surviving life and death matter. The sons' actors don't know how to act at all. The film is super boring too. The camera has no skill at all. The only supposed creative scene when they trap the monster is not intense at all. No background music for some reason. And then after paying so much effort to catch the monster, they released it for some dumb teenager for some dumb teenager reason and then killed it. So why did they try so hard to catch it in the first place? Anyway, I feel like this is a low budget, brainless movie.
All right.
I mean, that pretty much sums it up.
Well, hey, I will say this. It's short.
It is short. I was so happy when I saw it was only going to be an hour and a half.
Yeah, 92 minutes. So it's
Yeah.
not a big lift if you like that kind of thing. The monsters are interesting looking.
I guess they aren't really that different from a lot. Like a lot of horror movies use creatures with long limbs and big mouths, which is
Yeah,
what they had. So it's not really that different from other
no,
movies.
I'm not saying that it's like that. It was
If
interesting.
anything, the Dark Crystal did it better because
Wow,
the Striders
those are,
have
yeah.
really long legs, and I just want to cuddle them. So
I don't know about that,
mouths are
but
a little weird, but yeah. Anyway, go watch the Dark Crystal instead. That's my
go
recommendation.
watch the Dark
Or the
Crystal.
Fall Guy. Or either one of those would be a better choice than this
Or
movie.
Gremlins.
Or
I've never
Gremlins.
seen Critters, but
I've seen
Gremlins.
Critters. Yeah, watch Critters too. But yeah, I mean, the comparison to 80s movies that use practical effects, I don't really understand that.
No,
Uh, I don't think that I will say for the budget, I don't think the CG was incredibly bad or anything. I
no,
think it was
we've seen
fine.
way worse.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that was not a fault I would give the movie. Whoever did the effects for the movie did a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah, the movie looks fine,
Yeah.
right? I don't have any problems with any of that.
Did you look at the one nomination for an award that the movie got?
No, I missed that.
2024 nominee at the South by Southwest Film Festival for Narrative Spotlight.
Okay, an audience award at South by Southwest.
I
Cool.
feel like they didn't watch the same movie I did, but
I don't know. I don't know.
I also feel like at a film festival, every movie is hype. So like even if it's a bad movie, it's kind of like I'm gonna bring this up and Derek's not gonna like this bit very much, but when we went and saw Suicide Squad in theaters,
The first one or
the
the James
first
Gunn one?
one,
Okay.
not the James Gunn one, we came out and we used to quote this on Screen Heroes quite a bit because it was kind of a phenomenon that we were all, I think, maybe just realizing existed in that moment. But we came out of that theater thinking that it was a pretty good, pretty fun movie,
Yeah.
and talking about our enjoyment of it. But then letting some time pass and then having the podcast talking about it, we realized that it was really bad, really
Hmm.
terrible. So I feel like the film festival kind of environment kind of fosters that environment that we had when we first
Yeah.
came out of that movie. So maybe they're a little skewed in their perception of what it is. Also, the actors and directors are very much there generally. So not a lot of people are going to be like, your movie was crap. You know what I mean? To the person's face. So I don't know.
Absolutely
That's
true.
my
And
theory behind that award nomination.
well, and film festivals are for films. The
Right.
idea is to promote films and support films. And
Yeah.
if everyone goes and trashes every movie at the film festival, then what's
They're
the
not
point in
going to
having the
be.
film
Well,
festival?
also, those people are probably not going to be
Yeah.
invited back, and everybody wants to come back. So,
Right. So, I get that for sure. And look, we we hit on this one pretty hard. It's by far not, the
no.
worst movie on,
I mean, we
on our
picked it
list
apart,
here.
but
It's
it had a lot more plot holes than a lot of the movies we watch.
it's to me it has a lot of the stereotypes of your kind of generic monster movie,
Yeah.
just with a smaller scope, than typical maybe. One of my big complaints is how much Nick is put in the forefront of all the marketing,
Yeah. And then
posters, and all that kind of stuff, and he's not in the second act at all. He's
right.
barely in the movie.
That's true. Yeah. It
All
is a
right,
little disappointing.
let's rate this thing. So, overall quality. Ryan, you want to go first on this one?
Sure. I mean, like we talked about, it's definitely not the worst movie we've seen. It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Um, I'm thinking, I know we don't do half scores, so I'm thinking maybe like an 11 or a 10, somewhere in there.
So I was gonna give it a 10.
Yeah. Well, then I'll give it an 11 and we'll just stick it because I feel like somewhere in between a 10 and 11 is where it deserves to be. So that
I
works.
think that's fair. That puts it at a 10.5, which is City of Angels, 8 millimeter.
Man, City of Angels was better than this, though. Yeah.
See,
I
but
don't know.
I don't know. Part of me thinks I should have given a City of Angels a higher score because we saw City of Angels and immediately saw 8 millimeter, and I should have. I want City of Angels above 8 millimeter
Yeah.
personally. But
It's hard to compare the movies, though.
they're
I
so
think
different.
City of Angels kind of gives you more like feelings, you're
Yeah.
feeling things. So maybe we hold that in a higher, regard than something like this.
Well, the end of City of Angels really kind of kills it,
Yeah, that was
right?
terrible. Right.
And that's when we're grading these movies after we've talked about them. So if the end of
Right.
the movie is a real low note,
Right.
so okay. And then we got caginess. Now, truth is, there's not much in here. He's a
No.
pretty kind of chill,
He's almost a background character for most of the
yeah,
movie.
right? Like the craziest thing, he does is, blowing himself up, and he hits some things. None of it's really cagey.
Yeah.
Um, I you know, I'm thinking like a 2.
Yeah, I would say only because it's a less serious subject matter than something like Pig.
Yeah. Or
I don't think he
Joe.
was any more. Yeah, I don't think he was any more cagey in this than he was in those movies. I just think that this was a more crazy circumstance than either of those movies. So yeah, I would agree with the two.
Huh. So that gives us a 10.5 on quality and a 2 on caginess. And now we got to figure out what movie is going to join our wheel. So we spin the wheel o cage to decide which movie we're going to watch. Joining the wheel and replacing Arcadian is The Boy in Blue. So to find out which Nicolas Cage movie we're going to talk about on episode 59 of the show, go to comingofcage.com. You can follow us at Coming of Cage. Watch the Wheel O Cage on the Derrico Studios YouTube channel. You can watch us there. The full show is up there. You can see us. You can subscribe on your podcast app of choice. Ryan, anything else on Arcadian?
No, not really. Go watch Dark Crystal or The Fall Guy
Or Pitch Black?
or Pitch Black or Gremlins or any of the other movies that we or the other reviews we read said about this movie.
Well, at least Pitch Black is about monsters that can't be out in the light.
It's
So
true.
there you go. And it's got Vin Diesel. So
Yeah,
you know how much he cares about family.
family.
All right. That's going to be it for us. We're the Coming of Cage podcast. I'm Derek. That's Ryan.
We'll see you next time.